I don't see any.
Hello.
Oh, I have to use my mommy voice.
Hello? Hello? Maybe I'm just not talking. All right. Hello and welcome to our kickoff seminar for the new 1920 season. We're so glad you could all make it today. Our seminar is going to begin in just a minute. First, I have the housekeeping things that Dennis Boyer, our board president, left for me to make sure I didn't forget anything. We have a whole great season planned, but unfortunately this could be our last season unless we get some more support from our audience. Our attendance people are the ones who keep us going. We make these seminars free, but our costs are not zero, unfortunately. And we all know that support for nonprofits has been sort of trickling down a little bit thanks to the new tax code and everything. So we really need a source of income, and that has to be our attendees. We ask you to give serious thought, individually and institutionally, to making a contribution. There's an envelope on the table there to slip in a little cash, or even better, becoming a member. There are various levels of membership. If you took a membership form when you came in, you can see what they are, including just an individual membership. It's fairly reasonable to join NPN. And you can find out more from the ladies over there or at our website. And we hope you all picked up an evaluation form. They're the sort of yellow cards. That's how we help plan our seminars for the future, by things you write on there that you liked, that you didn't like, things that you would like to see as a seminar. So make sure you fill that out and hand it in on your way out. So I want to also say that around 2:30 or so, there's going to be a 7-minute break for everyone to race out and feed the parking meters or head to the bathrooms, which are to your left as you come out of the room and go down the hall. And then we will begin right promptly after the 7 minutes. So pump those quarters in and race back. Looking ahead to our program in October, it's entitled How to Get Buy-In, Winning Ways to Engage Stakeholders. Our speaker will be Jay Vogt, a master at facilitating large groups. You may have heard of his consulting company, People's Worth. It's a private practice in strategic planning and change management. He's also a well-known author of books on several organizational and management topics. Now, today's program. An increasing proportion of philanthropy is coming from fewer individuals with larger gifts. That's why today's seminar is so important. Diane Remen is top-rated as a major gift fundraising consultant and as a workshop presenter. Philanthropy Media named her among the top 25 fundraising consultants in 2016. Diane founded her company, MajorDonors.com, 10 years ago to help small to mid-sized organizations boost their revenues with an eye toward the major gift. An active solicitor herself, Diane has served on nonprofit boards for many years. She holds a BA from Carnegie Mellon University, a master's in education from George Washington University, and an MBA from Boston University. So, without further ado, Diane.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. For those of you who like agendas, there will be one, but not right now, because we're going to jump right in. I'm guessing that a number of you here are wondering literally, how do I ask for that gift?
Can you
Yes.
use the mic?
I thought I was. I don't know if it can go louder. Is that better? Not better.
Raise it.
Right
Can you
near your
raise
mouth.
it? Raise it.
All right, 1 second.
Maybe higher on your collar.
Technical stuff. Better? Not really, I can tell unless I'm speaking right into.
It.
I'll try and turn the volume up
Thank
some
you.
more.
All right, and I'll speak in my New York voice. So, I'm imagining that a number of you are wondering literally, how do I make the ask? And I'm going to start there. So we're going to have us pretend that we're at a donor's home or office, that we've already spoken to the donor, we've had a nice chat, we've talked about, we're clear on their interests, we've talked about what we are up to, we've seen that they're interested in our work, we've asked for permission to talk about the funding plan, all this stuff we'll get to later, and we're at the point where we're ready to actually ask for the gift. And before we went in, we figured out how much we were going to ask for. I have to scroll here. We're a little old-fashioned. So there's only one line I'm going to ask you to memorize today, and we're going to get to it in a second. And it's the ask. It's the only language-centered sentence that we're going to be using. And the reason is that the language goes down easily, right? We want to ask in a way that in the donor's mind, neuro-linguistically, that we don't bump the donor. We want a nice, smooth sailing. And here it is. So if you were to ask me for a gift of $10,000, it would sound like this. So, Diane, would you consider a gift of $10,000 to support, I'll say, the food project? You're going to use your organization's name, and that's it. And then you're going to be quiet. Now, this is a workshop, so now it's your turn. I know how to do this. So on 3, let's all ask me for $10,000. 1, 2, 3.
So Diane, would you consider a gift of $10,000 to support the organization?
There you go. Good job. All right. Now, close your eyes and picture that screen that you see there, that black screen, and run the words across it, and let's do it again on 3. 1, 2, 3. Go.
So Diane, would you consider a gift of $10,000 to support the organization?
Great. Doing well. For those of you who learn by writing, let's write. You have several materials, I hope you can write on the back of anything you like. If you don't, you can just keep practicing verbally in your head. We're just going to take 30 seconds for the writers to write. So let's now read back what you wrote or what's been going through your mind on 3. 1, 2, 3.
So Diane, would you consider a gift of $10,000 to support the organization?
You know how to ask for a gift. There's only one variation. And that is, sometimes we're going to want to do a multi-year ask. I'm going to be using a 3-year time frame here, which is pretty typical of programmatic asks, versus if you're doing a big capital campaign like building a building, you might be doing 5-year asks. But we're going to focus on 3-year asks today. So here's how that one goes. It's the annual amount, it's the number of years, and we are going to do the math, even though the math is simple, because otherwise the donor's brain is going to be busy doing the math, and that's not what we want. We want the donor paying attention to what we're asking them. So I'll do it first. So Diane, would you consider a gift of $5,000 a year for 3 years for a total of $15,000 to support the food project? Okay? Your turn. 1, 2, 3.
So Diane, would you consider a gift of $5,000 per year for 3 years for a total of $15,000 to support the organization?
Actually, you're doing well. That one often gets muddled. But let's try it one more time, and we're going to be coming back to this throughout the session. So 1, 2, 3, the multi-year.
So Diane, would you consider a gift of $5,000 per year for 3 years for a total of $15,000 support of Alexander?
You now know how to ask for a gift. Not so hard, right? And just to complete this segment before I get to the general agenda, once you ask for the gift, you want to remain silent because otherwise you're basically negotiating against yourself. You knew what you were going to ask for, right? This is news to the donor. You want to be watching the donor for their reaction, for their body language. There's no need for you to speak once you've asked the question other than you're nervous, right? No need. So practicing silence is important because for some of us it doesn't come so easily. We have this urge to keep filling the space, but space is key. And just to give you a frame in terms of the time. So if we look at a 45-minute donor visit, this is how much time we spend. So this big chunk is about our opening conversation and understanding what the donor, how they see our organization, sharing some of our ideas and whatever it is we want them to fund and seeing what they think about them, etc. We're then going to ask for permission to discuss funding, right? It's a wonderful way to get it feels good and comfortable to get the donor's permission to talk about money. So we're going to do that. Takes a sec. Then we're going to talk about our funding plan. We need to explain to the donor what we have in mind. And then we're going to make that ask, which takes another second. And after that, we're going to have some time to explore what happens when the donor likely says some version of "let me think about it," right? Because what we want to do is we want to ask for a little bit of a stretch, especially if it's for programmatic. We don't want to go crazy versus a big building where we might be asking for a bigger stretch. And we want to keep in mind ego. You have to really, really, really over-ask out into the heavens for you to offend someone by asking them for more than they're going to end up giving you. Right? Got a lot of leeway up there. I would suggest to you, counterintuitively, you're better roaming around in the slight over zone than under asking. Why? That could be perceived as kind of insulting, like that's all you think I can do? You came to my house, you did this whole thing, and this is it? So I would suggest that you have ease. You will have researched the ask amount. We'll talk about that in a bit. And again, you have this big space where you can push them out a little bit, get them to the next level. And again, they might not say yes, and they might take you back down, but no harm done. The agenda. So, here's what we're going to be talking about today. Anyone want to guess what, once you're used to doing this a little bit, what the most challenging part of the whole process is going to be when we're talking about going to visit a donor, have a conversation, make an ask, follow up? Yes?
Getting the meeting.
Getting the meeting. Oh my God, getting the meeting. And the good news is, even though that process can be painful and will require persistence and your love of the organization, this is where your love of your nonprofit will come through, because you really are going to have to persist, and we'll talk about what that looks like. Once you have the visit, you are 75 to 80% sure of getting a gift. All right? So it's hard, but when you get a yes to the visit, you are likely on your way to a larger gift than the one you had before. And like I'd like to say, every visit has a ripple. Even if you get a no, and I'm going to talk about no in a second. Even if you get a no, I am going to suggest, and I have seen, especially with organizations I've been involved with for a long time, these conversations, you never know where it's going to ripple. The next thing you know, like 2 years later, somebody contacts you and said, oh, you know, my friend Susie told me that da-da-da-da-da. I mean, you have now had a conversation with someone with whom you have shared interests, right? We know they're interested in your work. So this is me starting as part of today to reframe what fundraising is all about. Because I know a lot of people do not like the thought of going and visiting with a donor and asking for money. And I believe the two main reasons are, one, oh my God, they're going to say no. But here's the news. They did not say no to you personally, right? This is not about you. This is about the nonprofit organization and us aligning 3 stars that we'll talk about in a second, about their having financial capacity, right? We need some money if we're going to bump the gift up. Of them being philanthropic. It is not our job to make people who are not philanthropic become philanthropic. And they're interested in your project. Now, maybe they're interested in your work in general and they're not so interested in what you're doing right now, or maybe they're just busy with other things. The no is not about you personally. The conversation will have a ripple. The second reason I think people dread, if I may use that word, the prospect, right? I hit the nail here for some folks. The prospect of going to ask for a gift is you think you're going to take something away from the person, right? You are going in your mind to pull money, to do an extraction like a bad tooth, right? And if I thought that, if that's what I thought I was going to do, I wouldn't go either. Who would want to go do that? But I want to suggest that it's the complete opposite. That when you're going to visit with a donor who cares about what you're doing, is interested in your project, initiative, program, whatever, and wants to make a gift and is clear the impact their gift is going to have, all the research, and there's MRI research, there's tons of research that says you're making the person feel good. Good, right? That's why I like to do this. I spent a long time thinking about, why do I like to do this? And I was in business and got into this via being on a nonprofit board and in a capital campaign and going, oh, this is kind of fun. And that is one of the reasons why. Is if you frame it as doing harm to your donor by getting a gift, then that's a non-starter. If you frame it as, oh, I am really going to give this person a chance to do something they want to do that's going to have an impact, that's going to make them feel good, that's the mindset that creates the confidence and the comfort. And I will be coming back to that periodically throughout the day. All right. So you can read the agenda, and you have handouts. I vaguely follow my slides. I have 2 slides that I do no matter what topic I'm talking about, pretty much. And this is one of the 2. Why people give. And I do this in particular for any of you out here who may be sort of grant funded, because that foundation's grants, yes, it matters who the person is making the grant, et cetera, and you want to be personal and tell stories, but at the end of the day, it's a different mindset in the foundation world. Again, researched to the nines, why people give. They give based on emotion. And as I say to people, don't tweet out that Diane said data doesn't matter. What is that? Data is used for most people as then the backup, right? If they're going to give a larger sum of money, they want to make sure you're operating in the black, that you've been around for a while. They are going to look at your data. But the driver for most people making an individual gift is emotion, which is why you hear so much about stories in the nonprofit space. And this applies all the way through fundraising, so it's not totally specific to major gifts. but conceptually, it's the thread that goes through appeals, everything else. It's the only slide I'm going to read a little. This is from an annual appeal. So right, we're not in major gift land, but again, just trying to get the concept across. Please consider supporting the 124 children aged 4 to 17 in our hospital. A third of them are receiving advanced chemotherapy. Many of the rest are taking part in phase 1 or phase 2 clinical trials, etc. Rewrite. 6-year-old Chelsea hugged her teddy bear tight. Teddy's hair didn't fall out, she said, patting her own bald head. So he's my good luck bear. He's going to help me get better from cancer, etc. What makes number 2 powerful?
Personal.
Personal. And it's about one person, right? I think we often get lost in numbers. Numbers take us to the left side of our brain, and we really are looking to keep people on the right side of their brain. There are some numbers that straddle, meaning you may have a number that makes people go, wow. They have an emotional reaction to your number because maybe it's so big. Like I'm working with some nonprofit investigative news organization and something like, well, $3 billion in the traditional media space has vanished in doing investigative journalism. I mean, that's like, whoo, you go. You might go, whoo. If you have an emotional reaction, it's cool if you have a big number. So I'm not outlawing numbers. I'm suggesting that as you tell your story, as you're visiting with your donors, you keep your stories on the emotional side versus giving them lots of statistics, which can be in a handout. All right. I'm going to do quick through these. This is like my big talk section, and then we'll go back to exercises. Basically, a major gift is a gift that's larger than what's coming through either your direct mail or your e-solicitation transom. Any donor giving you like $500, $1,000, well, all donors are important, but you want to ring the bell when you get those gifts. And you may call them a major donor or not a major donor, but you want to pay special attention. Call them right up, for example, and set up a visit to get to know them. And just to reiterate what Stephanie said, it's important to understand that the 80-20 rule is dead, right? It used to be 20% of the donors accounted for 80% of the revenue. That is no longer the case. Now, in campaigns, and when I say campaigns, I'm talking about like a building campaign, it can be way up at 95 or 97%. And even if you look at your annual revenue, I think you'll find a disproportionate amount of funds coming from very few donors. Are there exceptions to that? Yes, there are, but that's kind of the general rule, which is why your few key donors are important. And if we have time at the end to talk a little about campaigns, why there's a great focus on your top 20 donors, and here too. I did this one already. So, the 3 stars we're looking for. Person has to have some money. Person needs to be philanthropic. And person needs to be interested in what you're doing. And I say that, and then I tell the story of actually one of my first clients who told me this story. They went to visit a fellow who had been giving them something like $5,000 a year. It was a biking organization, and that was a good-sized gift for them. And they're in Washington, he's in Texas, so finally they were going to Texas for some reason. They get in touch with this guy, and they go visit him, and they get up to his house, and they see sort of shack plus one, and they see like the oldest bicycle they've ever seen. And the bottom line was, this fellow was so compelled by their work that he was giving them every cent he could. So are there donors like they're out there? Yes. But I'm going to be talking about sort of general rules of thumb today that will invite everybody in, and it's just the reminder that data, it's not all the data, it's how much people care about what you're doing, that's really what we want to know, because that is what drives the gift. Process. So, just to know what the kind of overall process looks like, there are a lot of ways to learn about prospective donors. I mean, we can do research, we can have referral sources, we can have conversations, we can do donor acquisition mailings, lots of ways. Then we have to figure out, well, who are the potential major donors? And I'm going to do a section on prospect research today that I know those words may mean nothing. I'm going to ask how many understand what that even is. Once we've identified our donors, we want to get to know them. Make sure what are they interested in, what are their priorities, how well do we align? If we have alignment, we want to present them with an opportunity that aligns with what they're interested in and make an ask that we have determined ahead of time. And then we want to let them know about their impact during the year. And I always suggest that for each major donor, you have a plan that has at least 4 touches, at least quarterly touches. Now, a touch can be an email just to them that says, hey, I thought you'd be interested in this article. There should be certainly 1 in-person visit a year if they're up for that. There should definitely be 1 document dedicated to the impact their gift has had and which you offer to discuss with them so they're crystal clear on what their $5,000 or $10,000 or $50,000 or whatever it is made happen. So we're not doing a session on stewardship, it's key, but just to put some benchmarks out there. All right. This is the area, prospect identification research, that I find most smaller nonprofits least familiar with. So, how many of you have actually had your database wealth screened? Maybe like 15-20%. How many of you have a subscription to a service like Donor Search or Wealth Engine? 3, 4. Okay. So, for those of you who are ahead of me on this, or ahead of the group, thank you for your patience. Okay. So, how do we identify donors from assuming we have a donor base? And they're the ones that you know, right? You can see they're giving. It's at the top, whatever it is, 5% or 10% of your list. But the reality is you may have a whole bunch of people there giving you $100 or $50 or $500 or some amount who have both the capacity, philanthropic inclination, and interest to give you much more. And wealth screening is the tool we use to find those. And I'm going to show you a wealth screening in 2 secs. Once we get the wealth screening, what you're going to see is basically a spreadsheet with just wealth indicators. Doesn't go into any detail. We then want to go to the next level and drill further. And we also have to do some data verification. Because here's the bad news. And this is the big wish everyone has. You cannot press a button and out comes what you need to know about your donor. Research is required, even using the research tools, okay? And the last step is to create what I call a donor profile, which whoever is going out to visit with the donor can use to give them comfort, to understand how much we're thinking about asking for, and to give them some background information on the donor. Not everything we found in the research. So I'm actually going to start by showing you the end. So here's a sample donor profile. Okay. All right, and this can have links to articles about the person, information about other family members. So this is what we're driving toward, so that we have a summary document about this person, what their interests are, an overview of their philanthropy if we can find it, and I'll talk about that in a second, and then kind of who they are, what they do, and what we know about them. Okay? So how do we get there?
Is this in a donor management system?
Pardon?
Is this in a donor management system?
This
Yeah.
is a Word document.
Okay.
All right. So I don't want to leave out, for those of you who've never done this, what I call gut reaction. You may know already who some of your top prospects are. You happen to know, however, through the grapevine, something about their capacity, something about their giving, something about their interest in you, and you've just never gotten out the door to go talk to them. We don't want to leave out those people. Put those people on your list. Then we're going to look at gift size, right? This you're all probably used to doing. Who are our largest donors? And then we have well screening. And I think the best way for me to explain well screening is to show you what you get back when you do a well screening. So what happens is, and I use I'm going to tell you, there are 4 services that are kind of pretty prominent in the space. I like Donor Search. I think they do the best job providing information on charitable giving, which is kind of what I'm most interested in, and I like how they present information. I do not get commission. Jeff at donorsearch.net is my guy. If you want to contact him, that's cool. But again, I'll list some other ones. So what's happened here is you have given, in an Excel spreadsheet, you have sent your donor information off to Donor Search, or to someone like me who sends it off to Donor Search. And basically, we need name and address, and I point out address because this day and age, we have to balance all the E stuff that's going on, where, yeah, asking people for more information can suppress action. I understand that. But also I understand the absence of address leaves me unable to well screen. And so there's always a balancing act going on about when am I only going to ask for that email to get the whatever it is you're offering, or when am I going to ask for name and address? Yes, sir.
Mail address or email address?
I'm talking mailing address. Everyone has email pretty much. Okay, maybe not.
It's hard to find it. Email.
All right, well, mailing address is what you need to do wealth screening, okay? And so you are sending your donor base, name, address, and their giving history. You need to supplying them with the giving information you have allows us to create context and for them to create context. So in these yellow columns, this would have been the information that was supplied by the nonprofit. This is just a sample. The well screening is like gazillions of columns long. These are some of the key ones. In this section, I'm going for concept, not detail, meaning you don't need to know all the detail of what the columns are and what's what. I'm going for the concept that if you're not doing well screening and you don't have a subscription, that you may want to think about it because the return on investment, if you're going to do major gift work, you will find be very high. So that, I just want to show you what it is. You get back information about, do they have a foundation? What's their political total? Can you go look that up separately? Yes, but it'll take you a long time if you have 3,000 people in your donor base to go do that. You are going to see portions of their charitable giving. Charitable giving is the interesting one, right? Because there's no federal requirement and no database that puts together charitable giving. So there's people out there who work for these subscription services who are assembling these databases, which tend to be skewed toward what we call the eds and the meds, meaning higher education and hospitals, not exclusively. But so someone can be a donor and be philanthropic, and you don't know it from here. So we have not 100% clarity from data. We have to live in a world of getting more information probably than we had, but not 100% complete information. This is not the world of 100% clear, complete, we find everything out about a person. But we can, from looking at this, start to identify who in our donor base can potentially make a larger gift and is philanthropic. That's really the point I want to make, along with the fact that the price for this has dropped so that it's 20 cents a record. Which, again, all I can tell you is I think you'll find it's a worthwhile investment. All right, now you have well screening, and you've just looked at kind of this financial stuff, and you have this upper level, you don't have the detail. And what having a subscription or using a prospect researcher gives you is detail. And so you can see over here, under charitable giving, it says 59 out of 126. And what that's telling us is the database system is pretty confident that 59 of these charitable gifts belong to this person in particular, but they're not sure about the rest of them. Whereas political giving, which we have pretty clearly assembled for us, we have a much higher ratio. But as you can see, you figure out, do they have a foundation? Are they sitting on a board? Again, it's not 100% complete, but it is very, very, very likely to tell you a whole lot more than you knew before you started about most of your donors. So here are some of the subscription services. They also do well screening. Blackboard Analytics, for those of you who use Razor's Edge, is sort of part of the Razor's Edge world. So that, to me, would bump it up on the list for those of you who use Razor's Edge as your donor software. Donor Search, iWave, Wealth Engine, those are, and there's some other ones out there, but those are the ones I hear about the most often. Okay. So again, I just want to plant a concept seed here, that there is this world out there where universities and hospitals have internal departments who do this work. But now smaller nonprofits can engage. Just since I've had my company, the price of this has come way down, such that if you're really going to do major gift work, again, I'm confident you will find a wonderful return and time savings, because this is so much of the research is right at your fingertips, even though it does need to be verified. How much to ask for? All right. So, part art, part science, part getting used to it. The donor subscription tools will make suggested asks. They give you two numbers. One of them is based on assets, which is going to be very high, especially on the Northeast and the coasts. And one of them is based on charitable giving, which is the domain I want us to be in. But you're also going to find that they're high if you don't have ongoing relationships with these donors, and if they're starting out at the $500 or $1,000 or $2,500 level. A lot of these ask amounts you'll see, yes, the person could give you $50,000. They have given other places $1 million. But guess what? To charge in when they're currently at the $1,000 level and move up to $50,000, I won't say it never happens, but I'm going to suggest that that's a big, big, big jump. And that's why, as a general tip, I'm talking looking at 10 times what they're currently doing. So if you have a donor giving you $1,000, you can comfortably take them to $10,000. If you see in the research, they tend to give a lot of $5,000 gifts. You could ask for $5,000 a year for 2 years for a total of $10,000. And let's practice right now and ask me for that on 3. 1, 2, 3.
So Diane, would you consider to give $5,000 for 2 years?
Guess what? We're doing that again. All right. So Diane, would you consider a gift of $5,000 a year for 2 years for a total of $10,000 to support your nonprofit? 1, 2, 3.
So Diane, would you consider a gift of $5,000 a year for 2 years for a total of $10,000 to support nonprofit?
exceed 5,000 consistently across.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's if you, again, if you had a $500 or $1,000 donor, and you learn that they're giving $5,000 or more elsewhere, and that they've given maybe a couple of $5,000 gift to a couple of elsewheres, and they're interested in what you're doing, you could definitely bump them up like that.
Is that 10 times start for gifts that are starting under 10,000?
Mhm. Yeah, and where you want to be careful is so think about a donor giving you 5,000 to jump to 50. That's starting to be a big jump. Again, this is like there's a little just practice but down below, if you have a $250 donor who actually you see, so the rule of 10, and I don't want to, that's a tip. It's not a rule. It's a tip. So if you have a donor giving you $250 and they've given you multiple gifts, and it's clear they love you and your work, and you can see they've given multiple $5,000 gifts or $10,000 gifts to other places, can you go ask them for $5,000 or $10,000? Yes, you can. So again, it's a tip. You have to factor in all the star pieces, right? Capacity, philanthropy, and interest in your work, and their giving pattern, right? As much as we learn about it. Some people, if they have donor advised funds, some people stay totally anonymous. You don't see anything because they're very good at hiding their money. So again, the donor research is not the be-all and end-all of charitable giving. It does tell you a lot of other stuff. It might point out someone who has a foundation that you didn't know. It might tell you their political giving, which turns out to be $150,000, which is an indicator of potential to make a major gift. You might find out that they sit on a board you didn't know they sat on, right? So there's all kinds of things you find out.
Diane,
Yes,
how do people get on those lists? Let's say that one of
which list?
Well, let's say that one of us gives $500 to the nursing home and $1,000 to the road race committee and $10,000 to Greenpeace.
I know,
Does
this
that
is
get
gonna-
reported someplace?
No, so that's what I'm saying. Here's what's really interesting about the charitable giving piece. There is no reporting requirement. So there are people who are assembling databases for the subscription services, and they are literally doing things like getting hard copy annual appeals going online, which they love now, and getting your donor list, right? You put up online, oh, and here are major supporters. So they're pulling, it's all public information, but they are assembling it from wherever they can find it, and it's why we only have a small percent of total charitable giving, and why it tends to skew to the larger places. I think they find those, they know who they are, and it's easier. So again, it's literally being manually assembled I'm sure they're using scanners and whatever they're doing, but there is no database of giving. Thanks. What times?
We have about
2:20.
until we need a break.
Okay, so we're about to go to we're about to go to set up the gift.
We can break whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I almost think now it's 2:22, and we'll be back at 2:30.
Okay. Okay. All righty. Yeah, well, I just want to reiterate, now that you've all reached the first level of putting your donation of $10 in the envelope, I want to talk about the next level, which is actually becoming a member. Depending on the revenue of your organization, it could be as cheap as $100 a year, or the fabulous sum of $250 a year. If you just want to join as a person, individual, not associated with your organization, it's only $75. But that kind of support will allow us to keep going. We have to pay our admin, our web person, printing, those things. We do need support. So these forms are over on the table. If you think you can bump up to the next level, please do so. You can do it today. Thank you, and here's Diane.
Hey, welcome back. Setting up the visit. I'm going to show you it. Let's first talk about. So I'm going to call you, and let's say miraculously I do get you on the phone, and we will talk about how to use email too. But the concept's the same. What are some of the objections you might give me, other than you're busy and we need to put the scheduling out in time? Like, what are some of the reasons? What might you say to me, other than, yeah, sure, we'll get together?
I know you're calling to ask for money, and I'm already committed.
Okay. I know you're calling to ask for money, and I'm already committed. Others? Yep.
Sometimes people just keep pushing the timeline out.
Right, they do keep pushing the date out. Yep. Other things someone might say to you? All right, are you willing, Abigail, to do So I'm Committed with me?
Sure.
All right. So let's not give me the little objection, but don't be impossible.
Yep.
Okay. And we're going to pretend we met at an event, the month before or something like that. Okay, and what nonprofit are you affiliated with? I'll try
It's the Elliott School, which is a craft school.
Oh, cool. Okay. I could go off on a sideboard, but okay. So.
I'll call you about that.
Ring, 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 ring.
Hello.
Hi, Abigail. This is Diane Riemann from the Elliott School. We met at that event about a month ago with that great speaker. Ringing bells for you?
Yes, I remember that. It was a great event.
Do you have 1 minute right now to chat?
Sure.
Great. So why I'm calling is, you've been one of our loyal supporters, and I'd love to see if we can get together. I can visit you at your home or your office, and I'd love to share some of our priorities for the next couple of years, see what you think. If any of them are of interest, you'll have an opportunity to provide support, but really, I really want to know what you think, get your advice. Might you be available Tuesday the 20th at 10 or Thursday at 5?
So you're calling about fundraising, right?
That's great. Watch as I don't say yes or no. If you say yes or no, you are now down a rabbit hole from which you will never return. All right? So I'm going to pretty much, in other words, repeat. Abigail, I'd really love to share the 3 priorities we've put together for the next couple of years. It's important to us that people like you who've been supporting the organization for a good period of time, that you know what we're up to, that we hear what you think, and if it ends up that you'd like to support something, great, but absolutely no requirement. I'm really coming to visit with you and get your advice. How's next Tuesday at 10?
So I do love the Elliott School. I spend a lot of time there, but I just want to let you know that my family and I are really thoroughly committed to some other priorities that we have in our family.
Thank you for sharing that. Again, that's all fine. Now, I'm only going to 30 minutes because I'm getting like a little resistance. Before, I didn't say anything about how long. Do you have 30 minutes for me where I could come by wherever it's most convenient for you? Do you have 30 minutes for us?
I'm going to say yes to you. I just keep saying no to you. Yeah.
Great. And does Tuesday at 10 or Thursday at 5 work?
Sure.
Which one?
Yeah. I mean, I could string you along, but let's go
Yeah.
Tuesday at 10.
Yeah, you did your big objection. Okay, Tuesday at 10. And what's most convenient for you, home or office?
Why don't we meet at the coffee shop on the corner?
That coffee shop, is that a quiet coffee shop? Just I want to make sure we won't be, we'll have some talking space.
Yeah, it's quite comfortable.
Great.
I think.
Okay, coffee shop on the corner. It is. So thank you. I'll see you then Tuesday at 10, and we'll go from there. Okay. Great. So you saw a lot of what I was doing in terms of technique. One, almost everything in fundraising, and I would say in life, is in threes. But someone has figured out, and I could not find the original research, but everyone I know in sales agrees, that when it comes to putting dates out, two dates, 2 times. All I'm trying to do is get her to her calendar. Once she's at her calendar, I have victory. These are red herring dates. I mean, I'm available, but I don't care about those dates. I can't go, oh yeah, I can do that. I can't, oh, oops, that was right? So my goal is to get her to look at her calendar. Success. Pretty much whatever she's going to come back with, I'm going to answer with some version of the same thing. I want to hear what you think. We have qualified her as a potential donor. It's fine if she has other commitments. Maybe there'll be something they'll be willing to do way out in time. I do want to hear what she thinks. And I keep going until I get like a totally definitive no. Which after those objections, typically then she would have said yes to me. And I only went down to 30 minutes after I've done a couple of objection rounds. In the beginning, I don't say anything about time. So that's the technique. No, there's nothing to put in the mail. That's another common one. You say, I'm really calling to have a discussion with you. We really don't have anything to put in the mail, because we don't. Let's see.
But you'd follow up with an email or some sort of reminder.
Okay. There are a difference of opinion on this. I say if the visit is within about 2 weeks, I would confirm like the day before. And just do a quick confirmation to make sure I'm not alone in the coffee shop. Right? The risk is, you want to make sure the person's there, but the risk is you don't want them to start changing it on you. All right. So that's a miracle I got her on the phone.
Yes.
Right? A miracle, I understand. However you communicate with your donors is fine. So you can start this out as well, first of all, you can start out on phone, and you can leave a voice message. And the voice message isn't going to do the whole thing. It's just going to identify you. Hi, I'm calling from the Elliott School. We met. Sorry I missed you. Love to chat. I'm going to try you again whenever you're going to try them again. In a couple days at some time. So now they know you're calling, and maybe they'll recognize your number and pick up the phone. If you don't get them the second time, or you want to start out with email because you don't have a phone number or that's your relationship, you're basically saying the same thing in an email. We love you, you're important, we have whatever it is you want to share with them, whether it's some new programs or an initiative, or whatever it may be. We have something we'd love to share with you and see what you think. The language I use as opposed to, and we are going to ask you for money, is you will have the opportunity, right, to impact one of the initiatives if you'd like to, absolutely no requirement. And then I sandwich it, so I go back to, I really would love your advice, are you free at? So I'm pretty much putting in the email what I did on the phone. And I suggest doing multiple rounds of 3, meaning I do email, or phone, email, and then maybe I lay low for like 3 weeks. And then I do it again. And then I do it again. And you're like, really? It's what's the balance between stalking and being persistent, right? That's the question everybody's wondering. And what I hear from people who've done this, and what I've experienced myself, is that you have to be way more persistent than you'd ever dream, because people are busy, and it's sort of just catching them at the right window, right? It's just catching them at the right window. And that's kind of what we're doing. Now, also, I'll get to you, I promise. I want to make clear that if you're running into this person somewhere, like in a school, like if you see the person, I was once asked this, they're like, can I set up the visit in person? I'm like, yes, yes. If you have a texting relationship with this person, text them, right? Yes, questions?
So I'm jumping from doing in-kind donations, which I've been very successful at,
to now doing individual and major giving. So I know the persistence part of it. My question is, an email, subject line.
Could be love to chat, important project to share, along those lines.
Could it be as simple as checking in?
Checking in,
I find, when I make the phone calls, then I can follow up with an email and say, my phone call today.
right,
And usually those go through,
right. And if
as
you,
opposed to going to spam.
right, yeah. So it's, again, using email and phone to set each other up is the idea. Yes, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could speak to the point here, you do not want to have a visit on the phone,
Oh.
especially in light of
Yes,
knowing somebody who's been supporting your organization for many years.
yes.
Can you repeat that question?
So, yes, I will. So the question is about the point of you do not want to have the visit on the phone, especially with someone who's been supporting your organization for a long time. Okay. For major gift work, and by that I mean getting us up to $5,000, $10,000, $25,000, $50,000 gifts, the most successful mode is in person. If the donor absolutely won't meet with you in person, is phone your fallback? Yes, and even better, video conferencing. Like, I love Zoom, but whatever one you're using. Because you'll see, to have the conversation, we are going to get to that big piece of paper I handed out. There's a structure to it. And so please resist your inclination to want to have the visit on the phone. It is not best practice for major gift work. In fact, a colleague of mine who works with much larger institutions, she said, even I, all the time I get the call to which my answer is yes, get on the plane. And that's even for larger organizations, right? Because the large national organizations. In person changes everything, if possible. So by phone, last resort. Some, if you're smaller, and especially if you're national, and maybe you really can't get there, that's when I go, all right. Yep.
What if you are, so I coached in my 25th reunion for the University of Virginia, which is large.
Yes.
And I was also in charge of the giving. And we did not have the budget or anything like
Right.
that to go make personal visits.
Right.
And so, I was making asks
Yeah.
of my friends over the phone.
Right.
And that was successful, but only because I knew them really well and I could
Yeah.
speak to them.
Right. Because you're, all right, well, you're in a sort of a sector called alumni fundraising, which is a being unto itself. So first of all, why do so many donors, if you look at their donor research over time, you will see that their largest gift is often to their university. And why is that? A, they had the experience at the university, and B, from the moment they got there, that university has been cultivating them, right? So they have big departments, they have been in touch with this person for years now, so that an alumni can call her peer and do a phone ask. So a sort of exception to my rule. I understand what you were asked to do, sounds like you did a great job, but that's sort of exception to the scenario most of us find ourselves in. Are there successful sort of call-a-thon-y things? Yes. And are some of them from the universities at larger levels? Yes. But again, that took a lot of work to make that possible for you. Other questions? Right? Let's see what's next. Okay. What is this big sheet of paper that you all have?
You don't all have
With permission of my client public source, and some more being handed out for those of you who didn't get one. So I think, low. Long way to go before we sleep. I thank an organization called forimpact.org. They are credited in the slides and on the sheet, maybe not on the sheet. And I thank my client, Public Source, who gave me permission to show the front part of the sheet. There is a back part. What is this? Has anyone ever seen anything like this? Something called a donor engagement tool, work with For Impact? No. No. This is, instead of traditional, quote, case for support. Marketing people take this and they want to screw it all up. But it's following a very, very specific model. It exists for one purpose, and that is to have a conversation with a donor during an in-person visit. And if you have to do it on Zoom or Skype, okay. And it actually would start out with it folded, and it should fold in about threes. Their one, they have a little more verbiage up here than I would like. It's a little too much words, but okay. They did something down below that I really liked, which I'll get to. So what's happening is, yes, good. The top portion of this piece, which should be at least 11 by 17, because it's meant to sort of be next to your donor and having a chat, and why I like it, and why I stopped doing what I was doing 4 years ago when I saw this, was too often, partly because you're nervous, partly because you know a lot about your organizations, what happens at a donor visit? You all talk 80%, and the donor's lucky to get a word in edgewise, right? And that is the reverse of what we want. And so by using this visual tool that does not have a lot of words on it, it really pushes conversation, creates conversation. I also like it because of the flow. So the top portion is really from 30,000 feet. Why do you matter? Why do we care that you're here? And also you understanding how the donor sees you. So up in that section, which is where you might start the conversation, if you've not met with this person before, the classic question is, oh gee, well, what did prompt you to support us? And then go deeper and understand why, et cetera, et cetera. After we're all clear at 30,000 feet, then we open up, and there's this little, there's this right. In theory, we want it to fall through. And here's where I get the most resistance and why we're going to do an exercise. You have a separate sheet of paper with 3 circles on it. Well, you had the option. Let's not all get up again. If you don't, write on the back of this. All right. What For Impact, which is a very well-established firm that's worked with a gazillion large and small clients, has determined, and a lot of, again, people in sales would agree, the magic of 3. 2, showing a donor 2 priorities creates sort of a conflict. Showing them 3 allows them to choose. It's like a brain decision-making thing. And the hard part, I know for a lot of organizations, is having to put their feet in a stake in, what are my 3 priorities for the next 1,000 days or 2 to 3 years? Because the whole conversation is going to drive off this. Now, the other thing I like about this tool is it's a sheet of paper that costs you maybe 50 cents. So we don't spend thousands of dollars putting some fancy thing, and then we go, but oh my God, you're a name tag. I know Audrey here, actually, she loves something else that we are going to pursue that's not in our standard form. And guess what I can do? I can make a custom one just for Audrey to make sure I have hit upon what is known to be her area of interest. So this is very flexible. And before we have you do your priorities, I'll finish the reveal. So at the end of discussing the priorities and having a conversation about them with the donor that has lots of, oh, and what do you think? And oh, why is that? If they're enthusiastic, the question I ask right here, this is a really important little box. Do I have permission, Audrey, to share our funding plan with you? And basically, I'm asking for permission to talk about money, right? And she said yes. I go, yeah, okay, that's good. Next. And then I do the final reveal, which has the funding plan. Right, there's just like mine. And I note that, let me move the slides here. I think it's separated. That's what it's on. It's not going anywhere. Escape. I'm stuck. Well, it's okay. If you can unstick us, great. I'm going to keep going because we all have it anyway. The bottom part starts, oh, magic, thank you.
They're afraid of me.
Great. The bottom part does start with how you can help. Standard to the model, champion, invite, invest. Why? Because you'll find that in the conversation with the donor, it gives you the way not to go right to dollars and cents. So you can start, once you get there, by saying, oh, you know, there are a number of ways that you can help us move forward and achieve our goals. And you can do a little champion, invite, invest. And from invest, you can then move into numbers. What today, tomorrow, and forever about, and on this one, you're going to see today and tomorrow because this organization's small enough, they don't have a legacy giving plan yet, which is fine, and one of the reasons I wanted to show this one. You all have a today, like sort of around your annual fund and things they can do. Maybe they can subscribe to something, maybe they can attend things, maybe they can do whatever, support your annual appeal, whatever it is. That's today. Tomorrow is about the 3 priorities, and what this group did that I had never seen a group do before was they actually took their triangle and they color-coded it so you could see the impact of various sized gifts that coincide with what their donors might be asked for as a major gift, what the impact would be based on the priority, which I thought was a cool solution, again, that I hadn't seen anyone do. And then if you do have legacy giving, meaning like bequests, planned gifts, whatever you call it, that can be a column if you'd like, if you have that. No pressure to do that. On the back of the form, this is another sample form. Looks very different. It's in your sheet. I'm not going to stop on it. On the flip side, we really want your nonprofit at a glance. So we want your revenue and expenses, the total for the last complete year. Hopefully you're operating in the black, you know, in like one of those pie charts, and maybe you want to talk, and what's your staffing, things that a donor who doesn't know your detail might want to know a little bit about. Rarely do we go over to the other side. Occasionally there's someone, oh gee, like what is your annual budget? And then you have it there, you can flip. And that, the marketing department can sort of take over the back. And if you have awards, you have honors, you have examples of impact, that can all go on the back. So this is very different. It's very different from anything anyone's seen. It's very intentional and very effective. Yes?
What if you're a brand new organization?
If you're a brand new organization, first you need to like acquire some donors. I mean, it's your like, I'm not sure how to answer that one. This is really designed for organizations who have some donors that then they want to suggest that they might want to become major donors, and or, so the one place that comes to mind, board development. So you could think about creating something like this to get clarity on your strategy for board members. And I can't begin to tell you how important it is to not just throw some buddies on your board. You will pay dearly later. For a smaller organization, board members who have financial capacity drive revenues like nothing else, right? In addition to get on the plane, what else I put on my answering machine is build your board. That is the answer to a lot of questions I get. Build your board. So you may find this tool helpful with that. Okay. So, let me see. Okay. What I'm going to do is so you make the ask, and now we're jumping to the far end, and I know we've jumped around. We've gone from set up the visit to we've had this whole conversation. Make the ask. Let's ask me for $10,000 a year for 3 years on 3. 1, 2, 3.
So, Diane, would you consider
All right, needless to say, we're trying that one again. Do you need to hear me say it?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So Diane, would you consider a gift of $10,000 a year for 3 years for a total of $30,000 to support whatever it is? Okay. 1, 2, 3.
So, Diane, would you consider a gift of $10,000 a year for 3 years, total of $30,000 to support whatever?
Okay, now we'll do an easy one. Now just ask me for $25,000 outright. 1, 2, 3.
So, Diane, would you consider a gift of $25,000 to support whatever?
All right, so given our time remaining, what I think I'm going to do is first ask, all right, just as there were kind of objections that people came up with about setting up the visit, I have other commitments, are you going to ask me for money? What comes to mind that people might say, and I'll probably have some of them up here, but let's have you say them, maybe of other ones. So I've asked you. So I've said, Amit?
Yes.
So I've said, Amit, would you consider a gift of $10,000 to support the food project?
Well, let me think about it. I've never done anything in this area of food.
I understand you want to think about it. It seemed that from our conversation that you're very enthusiastic about the work we're doing here and what our priorities are. Do I have that right?
Sure.
Great. And the amount of $10,000, again, I get you want to think about it. Is that the kind of impact you do think you want to have?
I think I do.
Great, great. Then let's do this. Why don't I come back next week, give you some time to think about it, and we can conclude the conversation then. So how would, like, next week at this same time, would that work for you?
I think that would work for me, but I would also like to have some data if you can give me on what are the other projects that I can possibly support in this area.
Ah,
So that I would know that this is the best one.
Okay, so these are our, it's an interesting, post-ask objection, unusual. That's okay. Putting me to the test. Because usually during this section, which is fine, is when you would have asked that. You would have said, oh, is that all there is? And I
You didn't give me a chance.
well, we didn't do that part, right. So I would say these are our priorities. You know, this is the direction we're heading in. Is there something else you're thinking about that is of interest to you that we didn't cover in one of these three?
Yeah, so that was the question.
Right.
What may be my choices and
Well, right, well, we would have done
Very
your choices, so this, I
Would have
jumped
done
you
it
to
already.
the end, right, I jumped you to the end,
Sure.
okay? Anyone else want to try one? Who else wants to object to me? Any other objectors? No, yeah? So, I'm sorry, I can't see your name. Sophie. So, Sophie, would you consider a gift of $10,000 a year for 3 years for a total of $30,000 to support the food project?
Well, what I really need to do is go talk to my wife or my sister with whom we orchestrate the family foundation.
Thank you. Okay. I have to go talk to whomever it is. I don't care. I'm going to ask the question designed to tell me where their relationship is, how important the other person is in the process. And depending on the answer I get, I'll go from there. But let's do it. So Sophie, I understand you want to go talk to your wife. How about I come back next week at this time, then I can speak to both of you. And if you have any questions, I'll be here, and Susan will hear, the full presentation. What do you think?
I don't think it's necessary for you to come back, but I'll plan to speak with her and see what she thinks.
Great. All right. So I'm going to rely on Sophie's description of how her relationship works. And what I learned was she's going to kind of run it by her partner, wife, spouse, whomever, and come back to me herself. Fine. And she said, I don't have to come back again. Before I leave, I am going to have set up a phone call. If I have not set up a phone call, you will call me and you will say, I am chasing. And I will say, well, yes, you are chasing. Did you set up a specific time to follow up at the end? And you will say, oh, yeah, I forgot that piece. I'm like, forgot that piece. Have fun chasing. I can't help you. You're chasing now. Please. So I would say, okay, then let's set up a phone call. It's so annoying to do telephone tag and email tag and all the tags. Let's.
You got me laughing, that's good.
And, yeah, I know. And is next week at this time good? So I always just start with next week at the time. That was good thinking. Well, maybe it'll be good again. Let's see what happens.
I'm not sure, let me just look at my calendar and we can.
Okay, and once she's looking at her calendar, we're done. All right? Great. Yep.
You know what, I can't give 10,000, but I could give 5,000.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. Let me give you a hug back. How would you like to pay? Would you like to do it's going to be very natural. Once she said yes to me, thank you, because I forget that case sometimes. And then people keep going, oh, no. She said, I'm willing to do 5,000. Yes, thank you. How lovely. How would you like to make the gift? Do you want to do check or stock or credit card? What's best for you? And then, if she's whatever, I pull out my form, pull out my pledge form, right?
so you don't try to negotiate.
No. No. I will tell you when you negotiate. Good question. Oh, next up.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So, do you literally, at the meeting, pull out the form?
Yep. Only if the person says yes. I am only pulling out paperwork if I have a definitive yes.
And are you pulling it out to them, or should we wait for them?
I
to
am,
sit there
I am
and fill
pulling it
out?
out to offer completing it with them if they'd like,
Okay,
and if they prefer not to, just to leave it, fine.
okay, good,
Okay.
thanks.
Yes,
What about that whole pledge thing?
right,
If they say, I'll pledge this amount.
right. So she said yes to $5,000 a year for 3 years. And so you do need pledge forms, to have what I call pledge form, multi-year forms with you. I'm going to do this detail a little bit here. There are two types of pledges. There are binding pledges, meaning on the form it says, you know, this is binding to your successors and assigns, and this document is valid in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And if you were building a building or hiring someone or doing something else that relies on what's likely an even larger gift, you may want to be binding. There is difference of opinion in the field. I try to tell you what I'm, and the 90% percentile or the consultants disagree. The other side of the fence says, aside from those cases where you are building the building and if someone's giving you a $5 million gift, you need to know you're getting it or you're going to be in big trouble. There's a pledge, there's an intent. There's an intent to a pledge. It's completely non-binding. The form says it's non-binding. Why are we bothering? Because those forms have fulfillment up at the 95% plus level. And so for those of you who want to go that route, I kind of personally like that route. It's the donor saying, I'm planning on giving you this, you know, who knows, something may happen and I might not. I don't have to. And then you need to, before it's going to come due, you need to send them a lovely, I don't use the word invoice, a lovely document that nicely reminds them. But for people who don't like to pledge, the intent works great and you don't even deal with the pledging. And it's just a different, a more comfortable approach for a lot of organizations. So some places are all binding, some places are intent most of the time. Either way, fine. Yes?
One quick thing on this.
Yes.
If the donor is using a donor-advised fund,
Yeah.
like Fidelity, Charitable Gift,
Yeah.
or Vanguard, or whatever, those, they say, it cannot be
Thank
binding.
you. Right. There are restrictions on the use of charitable gift funds. And so this works perfectly for those cases. And thank you for pointing that out. You also can't use them for event tickets and a couple other things. But let me go back to negotiating. What?
It's giving us its own version of what we
Okay.
need to do.
So here's the thing. When you're new at this, you're going to be inclined to negotiate more often than you should. Because you're going to hear things like, wow, that's a lot of money. And you're going to think, whoa, okay, that's like a negotiation trigger. No, that's just the donor hearing you ask them for an amount that's likely larger than they've been giving for the first time. The only time you want to negotiate, and you will see it in body language, you will hear it in voice, is when someone says to you, as much as I love your organization, there's just absolutely no way in the world I can do that. And they're going to be pained, and they might be telling you why, and you are going to know that they can't do it. In which case, to be respectful of what they just told you, the major donors' recommended negotiation strategy is to immediately drop the ask by 50% as an acknowledgement that you heard them and to retest. So I would come back with, so, Amit, does $5,000 a year for 3 years for a total of $15,000, does that make it possible for you to have the kind of impact you'd like to have here at the food project? And you would say,
Would definitely like to consider it.
okay, so you're taking
Already
it.
said I'm thinking.
Well, okay, now a new, so let's pretend you still said, I wish I could, but I really can't. In order for us not to get into a perpetual negotiation cycle that's going to feel uncomfortable to everyone, now you're going to flip it back, right? Now you're going to do, so Sharon, I know you love the work. I know you want to have impact here and continue to support us. What works for you? And just have her tell me. Right? But again, you will have carefully researched these donors, I hope. You will know the ask amount is likely for most of them in the right range. Now things happen. People's businesses fold. They all of a sudden have to take care of, 2 aging parents. Things happen in people's lives where their financial capacity is not what it used to be. So sometimes you're going to get, there's no way I can do it. And again, you're going to know when you hear it, there's going to be sort of some pain or sadness with it, because they really would like to support you at the higher level. Unless you hear that, your response to, well, that's a lot of money, or that's way more than I was giving before, is to keep yourself out of the money value part of the conversation, right? As soon as I say, yes, that's a lot of money, what is that person sitting there thinking? Like, whoa, she thinks it's a lot of money. Right. Like, where does that get me? Nowhere. I'm just always going back to impact. I'm going back to, with that kind of gift, what a difference you'll be making here. That's what I'm doing. I am not putting my own money stuff into the pot. And I am having faith in my research that told me what to ask for. Again, they're not likely to say yes right away. But at the same token, it's going to be relatively rare where I have to negotiate. And just to repeat, if you didn't get to yes, you want to set up the next step. Almost everything in fundraising and many other things, you want to set up the next step and have a clear date and time for it. I also recommend that we don't ask for referrals while the person's in the process of deciding what they want to do. So until I hear a yes or no, I'm not asking the question, oh, is there anyone else you know who you think might want to support what we're working on? And if there are people who do want to support it, then you're going to ask them, how are you willing to e-intro me, or can I use your name? So it's not going to help you that much to have a referral that's essentially a cold referral, right? You want a referral where you could use their name in some way, or they're recommending you in some way. And you want to take notes. You can put them in Word. It doesn't have to be fancy. After each visit, you want to document what happened. Or, institutionally, you're going to be on a journey to nowhere, because some of these processes take a while. All right. It is 3:14. Questions? I'm now going to open this up to questions. Yes?
So you focused, and I much appreciate for us and for others in the audience, this small, medium size. I heard a similar presentation from someone who was coming from a university, big-ass, multi-million-dollar perspective, and they talked about they expect a dozen touches before they even start talking
Great
money.
question. Thank you.
So my question is, and there are different contexts, but how do you sort of calibrate?
Yep.
Is this, your advice here seems like, first in-person touch, you're going to make an ask. When might you not do that?
Okay, great question, and thank you. So, there is difference of opinion in the field. But first of all, to contextualize, I'm talking about, I'm going to call them smaller, meaning probably by and large, under $100,000, likely programmatic gifts, not some big capital campaign with some huge donors, okay? Because that's where I'm assuming a lot of you are kind of starting, because the session was for smaller. All right, here's the controversy in the field. And some of it depends on just each donor and your comfort. With the donor engagement tool, if you know the donor at all, and the donor has clearly been supporting your organization, there are a lot of donors, and I've done this myself, who actually have been sitting there waiting for someone to come ask them, right? They've been given to you for a while. They're sort of surprised no one has said, hey, can I come visit with you? And so those donors, in fact, are expecting to be asked on the first visit, and will wonder what on earth you're doing there if you don't. So recommendation 1 is to always bring the donor engagement tool with you. That said, there's also real value to what I call the two-touch process, where the first visit is what I call get to know your donor. You don't go with any papers, maybe an annual report if you wanted some information. You have your donor, okay, donor engagement tools in your briefcase, but you're not planning to pull it out. And you are purely having a conversation with that donor to understand more about them. That's like a whole other session, and it's mostly about inquiry, and there's a lot online about that. And so session 1, your goal is to understand what is important to them. That is the goal of the visit, and you definitely want them talking most of the time. So my answer is for these kind of sized gifts, with donors that have been floating around, or maybe you've asked previously, I'm in the camp of 1 to 2 touches. There's a whole world of moves management with gazillions of touches, and it is true, if you're going to be asking people for $1 million, it is unlikely that it's going to happen in 2 steps. But I've gotten gazillions of smaller nonprofits. It's 10 years now. I've been doing this out the door with donors who've been sitting there waiting for someone to come, or they just need to meet with someone and get to know them a little bit, and then the person comes back and they ask on the second visit. So that's my approach. Yep.
Do you prefer to have the person's name associated with the gift, or does anonymous upset
It's
you?
really not up to me.
Because you don't care whether the 10,000 or 50,000.
Well, how the gift's going to be publicized is up to the donor, and that should be on your, if you look online, you'll see lots of gift forms, pledge forms, and that's one of the questions. How do you want to be recognized? What name do you want us to use? Or X, anonymous. It's up to the donor. I don't have,
I think having a name makes a big difference.
but that's up to the donor. I'm not investing any energy into that. It's up to the donor. You don't want to be pulling donors, right? Our goal is to just give donors the opportunity to make happen what they want to make happen, how they want to make it happen, as long as it fits within our mold. I'm not getting all entwined at all about are they or are they not anonymous. They're just telling me. Questions? Yes?
What are your reactions to sort of small dinners with, say, like your ED and, I don't know, whoever your fundraising person is in an organization with, say, 3 of these targeted donors, like a very intimate...
Okay, house
dinner
parties.
I'm
going to call it house party. It could be small dinner with 3. It could be larger party with 30. My reaction is those are a nice way to A, bring in new people, and you can ask for a group to fund a specific something that coincides with their giving level. Group asks are completely not the same as asking a person one-on-one for a gift. They serve a role, again, to bring people into the organization, and let's pretend you wanted to fund something that was $25,000, and you spoke to the hostess or host, and you knew their group of friends and whoever you were inviting together. That wouldn't sound like some crazy thing. That's sort of the pretty tried and true and agreed upon strategy for, quote, house parties, group dinners, etc., is to give the group a project that they can see themselves as a group doing. But it's not major gift work as that I'm talking about at one-on-one. They're a good thing to do too, and they're a good way to bring new potential major donors into your system.
If you receive an unsolicited donation, would that be an invitation gives a gift, doesn't include their address, gives you a cashier's check, you know what their name is, you don't want it to be listed, but you can, you know, they're a local resident.
They don't. Oh, sorry. So the question is, you're getting an unsolicited gift from someone who clearly wants to say unidentified, off every list, they're giving you a cashier's check. And they're in,
It's a major,
It
for us,
may-
it's a major gift.
at most, you can contact that donor and as you know, we want to thank you so much. I don't know how you thank this donor.
I
Write
her
them.
address, I wrote her a personal.
Ah, so she knows you have her address. You wrote writing personal notes, gold standard of thank you. Great. You could write her another note that says, "We'd love to visit with you. Here's my phone. Here's my email. Here's a couple days and times. And I think you have to say, look, I see how you're giving. We respect anonymous, but we'd love to hear what you think if you'd like to share it. I think you have to be pretty just authentic about what the situation is and give her a way to contact you. If you would like to chat, so you're really not chasing her, but giving her the option to share. Questions? Yep. Yes.
I was curious for this and sort of the laying out opportunities. If the organization is seeking that general operating support, does it have something new to put on the table? Nothing flashy, yep, because
Yep.
there's attrition, right? You could,
Okay.
at least in our case, you know.
So the question is, really what we'd all love is general operating support, and we don't really have anything new. That becomes a question of sort of packaging. How do you package what you're doing in chunks, in programmatic chunks that people can fund? And we didn't have time today to go into restricted or unrestricted gifts, because obviously with the priorities, people are going to say, I love everything, and that's fine, and then they're basically giving you a general operating gift, right? I love everything you're doing for the next 2 or 3 years, general operating gift. But if someone's like following down one of those priorities, know that it's a pain in terms of accounting, and it doesn't meet your little wish that it was general operating, but is likely to be much larger because they can clearly see their impact. The more donors can see the impact of the gift, the more they will give. But thank you for the question. You have to be clever about how you package what you're up to. So it doesn't say, keep the lights on, right? It doesn't say, buy computers. They're in the context of the work you do, of your programs. Questions? All right, so now that it is, 3:24. We're good? All right. Yes.
What do you think about the phrase, ask for advice and they'll give you money, ask for money and they'll give you advice?
Well, we're sort of doing that, except for we're being a little upfront in the initial communication about you will have the opportunity to support one of these initiatives if you'd like to, but we really want to know what you think. And you do. You want to know what these people who are supporting you think. And so you are asking for advice. When you're doing the initial, if you're doing an initial get-to-know-you visit, you can outright say, we really want your advice. We are not going to ask you for a gift. You can be, and once you say you're not asking for a gift, you cannot ask for a gift, right? And those get-to-know-you visits, you're not planning on. Obviously, if the donor says to you, well, you know, I really want to make a gift, and you're saying, well, I really wasn't coming here for that. And yeah, of course you accept the gift. But that adage holds true, and that's why the opening to the setting up the visit is, we'd really like to know what you think. And some of your major donors, you can ask them early in the process, even as you're figuring out what your priorities are. Okay. All right, do you need 2 minutes at the end? Wait. Yes. One more thing. All right, so there's always only one way for me to end this, aside from saying, please fill out your evaluation forms, those yellow sheets.
If you didn't get one, please
You
get one
didn't,
before
they're
you
really
leave.
important.
This is how we make more seminars happen.
Right, this is how they figure out what you want to hear about. So, we end with, The final ask me for $100,000 flat. 1, 2, 3.
Would you consider a gift of $100,000 to support it?
Great, thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for coming, and I want to reiterate that next month we have how to get buy-in, winning ways to engage stakeholders. So I hope you will all sign up for that one, and we want to thank Diane for this wonderful, informative, interactive seminar. And fill out your things. You do not have to sign your name, but we do want your advice.
If I could make a quick announcement, Lexington Arts and Crafts Society, LexArt, one of the things we're doing is trying to reach out more to the community. We have an event, we have some information on the back to which you're